Uh, I'm out here chilling, just taking it easy, relaxing, ready for a productive, creative weekend.
Yeah, man, we gotta do the best out of this situation we got going on today and these days.
Yeah,
I
most
just I just want to give you a little bit of information about what Krylon is, Krylon Talk is, and what it
okay.
stands for. So I started Krylon Talk because it seems like the new generation painting graffiti now tend to forget there's pioneers to the graffiti culture, and there's people that have been doing it way before they have.
Yeah.
And I try to shed some light on that and to inform people out there that there's people out here, that are pioneers, that really live this, and the passion for it. It's amazing, and just to let them know you're not the only one out here. And also, I try to share what graffiti artists like yourself were using when you guys started painting back when you started that's not available today,
Yeah.
and certain type of techniques and stuff like that. So I was hoping if we could start today, if you could share a little bit about what year you started painting and what utensils were you using when you started.
Okay. Okay, folks. Well, first off, once again, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor for me to be able to speak to the audience. Uh, I go by the name of Mr. King Cre8 from South Central Los Angeles, California. Um, I represent Rockin' the Nation Crew, West Coast artists, Last to Survive, and the Magnificent team from over on the East Coast. And I've been doing graphs since the age of 9 years old. I'll be 47 this year, so that's a long time for me to be doing it. I didn't hit the
Yes, sir.
yeah hit the wall until the age of 13. I was doing it on paper at the age of 9, all the way. So I was doing it on paper for like 4 years. I've been doing art though, drawing as a kid, but I was really getting into doing the bubble letters and the fresh little boxy letters and doing stuff like that at the age of 9 years old in the third grade. By the time I turned 12 or 13 was when I first picked up a spray can, and I was taught by a gentleman by the name of Rish. He was a writer from South LA. His nickname was spelled Rish, Rish. And Rish
Rick.
was the one who, yeah, Rish took me under his wing and gave me guidance on how to spray paint on the wall from start to finish, how to paint the correct way. Uh, I had another mentor by the name of Bazaar One, and Bazaar he went to junior high school with me. When I was in the seventh grade, he was in the ninth grade, so he was older than me, and he was like very good writer. His piece book wasn't no joke. Uh, he was the kind of writer. His piece book wasn't full of tags and stickers. His piece book was full of straight masterpieces and productions. So when I first saw a piece book for the first time, it was his book. And when he showed me his book, me coming out of elementary school, uh, looking at a book like that, I was like blown away because I never seen a book that looked like that. I never even seen that kind of style of art done with special kind of art markers, which was called at that time design art markers. Those were some real heavy, strong smelling markers that was heavy. And you could like actually get high off those markers because of the chemicals in it. But design art markers and the old school prism art markers with the two-sided tips. And he's the one who taught me how to be a real good artist in my book and how to be very detailed and very clean with my work. So that's where I get both sides of my direct teachings from. Let me not forget to mention I surrounded myself with my homies. Them dudes wasn't no joke. When they came to piecing, they was very critical. They was very crucial about everybody work that was in our circle. So if you had whack pieces, they would definitely tell you it's whack. They didn't bite their tongue. They didn't sugarcoat nothing. Uh, that right there made me very polished at an early age because I never wanted my stuff to be considered whack or garbage. So I was always specializing in always drawing and mastering my techniques and skills at an early age. Yeah.
Definitely. And can you share a little bit about what was your first spray cans that you were using at the moment, and what did you start with, and maybe what did you choose to go with?
Okay. As far as spray paint, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is a real good testimony for all the writers out there. When we was coming up, yeah, we definitely knew about Krylon. That was off the top. But they had a
Yeah.
lot of other spray paint that was out. See, when you growing up in the hood, we had hardware stores. It wasn't no Home Depots at that time. It wasn't no paint stores where we could go buy spray paint tips and special Belton and Montanas and all these new cans that came out. It wasn't none of that. It was more like straight from big corporations that produced spray paint at the time. And there was a can called Groco, National Groco Paint. And that was one of the, it was so many underground brands of paint that wasn't like made by graph artists or people who was trying to accommodate graffiti artists or writers. The paint when they made it back then was made for painting furniture in the house or things around in your wherever you was trying to paint. So that was an interesting time back then. But as artists, saw the color selection that we was able to work with. Now, let me say this: we did have our particular paint that we like. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people, they use certain cans for certain situations, like Groco, like the paint I was just talking about, National Groco. They had a real fresh light purple color that was real
Okay.
good. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of us would use that. They had a real nice baby blue that was different from the Krylon baby blue. We would use that. Uh, let's keep in mind, back then we had standard brand paint store. So back in the day when we had standard brand paint store, standard brand would carry a certain brand of paint as well called epoxy. And epoxy paint was definitely different. They had like a fresh, like an army green color with olive greens and stuff like that. They had other colors too, like tans. But I used to like to look at those colors when I used to go to Standard Brands paint store back in the day. But we had Builders Emporium back in the day. That was another place like Home Depot, but it was a big corporation, Builders Emporium. They sold like tons of spray paint from Krylon, and they had a few other brands, but when you growing up in the hood, a lot of people was racking. I'm not gonna sit up here and act like I was a major hardcore racker. That wasn't really my thing, to be honest. Even though that was part of the movement and the culture, at a young age, I was always into being an entrepreneur. I learned how to make money at an early age. So what I would do is I would do my art and make money and go buy the supplies. Or if I had homies from my crew that they just was down to have my back to give me what they wanted to give me, then I wasn't gonna refuse it either. So I took that from what they wanted to give it to me because they knew I was gonna get busy on the wall. Um, oh, once again, growing up in the hood, a lot of for those who really didn't have the money to go buy paint or they just didn't want to rack paint, we would also. I knew me. I'm gonna speak for myself. I knew that me personally, because I didn't have a lot of paint, what I would do is do a lot of silver pieces back in the day. Silver and black, silver and dark blue, silver and cherry red, silver and anything dark, basically. But mostly it was those colors I just named. Or we would do gold, cherry red, gold, true blue, regal blue. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of different colors and stuff like that when we would do silvers and gold. And when we was busting those silvers and golds or silvers and golds, we would go to Standard Brands or Builders Emporium, and you could get those paint for like less than $1. So imagine that back in the day where you could go to the paint store and get silvers for less than $1. They also had some dark colors that was cheap, but mind you, I did do some pieces with those cans, but the quality and the thickness of the paint was real watery with the dark colors. But the silvers was always good. And the whites was okay. But the silvers, everybody definitely, It was called Rust Defender. I think it had a little character behind like a jail bars, and the little character looked like a rusty character, and he was holding that was the label on the can, Rust Defender. I would love to go buy some of that. Or Standard Brand would have a green can, a real cheap label. That was like 89 cents for a can of paint.
Oh, that's not bad. Dope. For everybody that's tuning in, can you share around what year this was?
That had to be 86, 87. That's when I first started getting my paint. Even though I was drawing on paper at the age of 9, as far as doing writing, I didn't start hitting the walls until like 86, 87. That's when I first started spray painting on the wall. Anything before that was all on paper. So I was always good at doing stuff on paper. That's why my drawings are good, because I spent a lot of time as a kid. While other kids might have been outside playing, I was the kid inside the house or spending time drawing a lot. Or I was that kid that I didn't go to bed on time, like my parents would say, be in bed at a certain time. I would be up drawing on the floor, laying across the floor on my stomach, and I would be up all the way to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's odd for a young kid to be up at them times in the morning. And my mom would come in the room and say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing my art." She said, "Do you see what time it is?" She said, "It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You still up drawing?" I said, "Mom, I gotta be fresh." She said, "What the hell you mean you want to be fresh?" "I gotta make my art look good." She said, "You need to go to bed. Watch this." She would turn the light off. I would wait for like about 20 minutes, turn the light back on, and keep drawing. And then if I hear her footsteps, I'd turn the light off and jump into bed. That's when I was young. So that shows you my determination. I was real persistent, and I was determined to become good.
Yeah, man,
Yep.
it's like with anything in life. If you love it, you gotta go the extra mile and be passionate about it. Is there something you could share about the transition when more of a graffiti, I guess you could say a camp for graffiti like Montana came in the game? How did you take the transition of starting introduction to that can?
Uh-oh, you break now. Now it's sounding like the robot again.
All right, let's
Can
give
you
it a
hear me?
second. I can hear you perfect. Can you hear me?
Say something again.
Give me a second. Can you hear
Okay.
me now?
It sounds like a robot.
All right, give me a second. All right, let me see. Still sound like a robot?
It sounds a little bit better. Okay, ask me that
Uh,
question again. Maybe I could hear you.
what I was asking is if you could share a little bit about how did you take the transition when I guess you could say a graffiti spray can came into the game, like Montana, that was made for graffiti artists. If you could share a little bit about, did you enjoy the introduction to that can, or was just another can to you?
Yeah. Okay. I couldn't even hear you. I think I sort of have an idea of what you may be saying, but yeah, you was breaking up. But I'll say this then. Let me say this, 'cause I think I sort of heard what you were saying. The transition from certain things. Let's say this. I could talk about a few things and hit key points real strong. Watch this. Can y'all
Okay.
hear me real good?
Yeah, we can
Okay,
hear you great.
transitioning. Okay, cool. Uh-oh.
I can hear you good. You good? Can you hear me?
Okay, it's still the same. Excuse me, but I'm gonna tell you about transitions. A lot of people at a certain point, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, people were talking about keeping it real. They felt like nobody should be doing artwork to be getting paid. Now watch this. There was a point before people start silk screening artwork on clothes. There was a point before silk screening as far as artists doing stuff for companies. Airbrushing was in full effect. So that was something that was the independent thing from a lot of writers. It was the next best thing to a spray can to pick up an airbrush and start airbrushing at your local swap meets or clothing store that would allow you in the neighborhood to airbrush on people's clothes, or you could do it from your home. And a lot of people that was locally talented with their artwork, they started to transition from painting on the wall to doing artwork with airbrushing. And that was a transition period. I would say late '80s, early '90s, where some artists they stopped painting on the wall because they felt like there wasn't no need to paint on the wall because people was going over their work. Now, for me, that wasn't the case. I stayed well balanced. I did do some airbrushing. I still airbrush a little bit, but it wasn't like something that I pushed right into the side. Like, oh, I'm too better. I'm better than the other writers. I'm not going to do that no more. I never had that mentality. My mentality was to have a great balance. I could airbrush. I could do drawing on paper. I could paint on the wall. I made for sure I was good at everything. Now watch this. The transitioning after airbrush. People we talking about selling out. So a lot of people was like, man, that's not keeping it real if you do artwork for companies. So there was a few small companies starting off that was willing to pay artists to do artwork for them. So a lot of people was like, nah, I can't do that. The graph is about keeping it. This is what the mentality was of not just me, but other writers. They was like, man, we got to keep it in the street. We got to keep it, underground. And I felt like that a little bit because I understood that that's where we come from. As now transitioning again, as I got older and I had a daughter and I started to mature and I didn't push graph to the side. I still embraced graph with all my love and with the passion. But I had to see things different. I never was the kind of person, oh shit.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Let's see. We're having some issues with the connection, but we're gonna bring Cre8 back in here shortly. Give me 1 second. We're about to get him back in here. Let's see what happened here. Let's get Cre8 back in here. Let me see. Trying to get Cre8 back in here. What's going on? What's going on? Uh, what's going on right here? Give me a second. Give me 1 second. We're about to bring Cre8 back in here. Where's Cre8 at? Let me see. All right, let's get Cre8 back in here.
Man,
How's it going, brother?
technology is crazy. It shut me down. I don't know what happened. I was talking and all of a sudden I went off.
Oh, it's
Okay,
all
we
good, brother.
back.
It's all good. What I was trying to ask is, when we're talking about spray paint, before we get back to where we're at, what I was asking is, how did you take the transition when they introduced a spray can made for graffiti artists? I believe it was Montana, the one that initiated that.
You breaking up. Damn, wish I could hear what you were saying.
All
Say it
right, give me
again.
a second. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Let me see. I'm trying to fix it on my end. I don't know what's going on. I never have this problem.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
A little bit better.
All right, let me see. Can you, all right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log off and log back on and see if I can get the reception back on right.
Oh, okay, and to make it clear.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
Okay.
log off and I'm gonna log right back in. 1 second, I'm on.
Sound a little bit better.
Do I sound
Okay,
good or
ask
should
me
I?
that question.
Do I sound good or should I
Yeah.
start over? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you real good.
Okay. So what I was asking, before we get back to where we left off at, how did you take the transition when they introduced a spray can made for graffiti artists? And I believe it was Montana.
Oh, okay. That was interesting. I remember when I saw it in the magazines before it even came to the United States.
Okay.
When there used to be a lot of, excuse me, a lot of graph magazines back in the mid '90s, and I used to see the color charts for the new cans coming out back at that time. It wasn't a lot of spray can companies that was making paint for the culture at that time. Um, and when I saw the paint charts in the book, it was disappointing because the only people who was able to get it was people in other countries. So it was jacked up because we was still like, damn, we can't even get our hands on none of that kind of paint. It wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years later when somebody made it accessible to open it up to people in the states of the United States to have access to it. So I'm gonna give you an example. One person or a few people that I knew way back that first started getting their hands on that paint was Man One from Krew. He had a store in in Alhambra. Man
Okay.
One had a store in Alhambra called Krew. And man, he had every color of Belton spray paint back then. That was only one of the only ones back then who sold that kind of paint. Now I have another buddy from Undercover Artist. His name is Earn One. Earn One, he was selling paint out of Anaheim, where he used to work at the swap meet, airbrushing shirts. He was selling Belton back then too. So that just goes to show it wasn't really that many paints that was being made back then. There was an old Montana paint, I think back then, that was being made before the new kind of Montana. I think they have two Montanas, one from overseas and one from, I think, Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I remember some of the people that was pushing the paint. I remember when they was breaking it down to us as artists of how the paint is distributed, and it was real interesting of how that paint started to get into our hands so that we could paint. I remember when I first got my hands on some Belton, we was used to Krylon. That's what we was used to. But soon we got our hand on some Belton and we saw the thickness of the paint. We saw how when we put them good tips on it, well, let me say this. With Belton, you couldn't stick at that time, if I could remember. No, I think you can put the regular caps on it, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe the first edition you can. The very first
edition. Yeah, you're right. And it was cool, man. Like, I was impressed with the color variation. Some of those colors that they made remind me of Krylon, actually. But they had way more color shades of one color. So that was one good thing. Oh, also, the good thing was back then, when them cans first started coming into our hands in the United States, they actually was paying tribute and giving honor to some artists or writers from the culture. Case 2 had a can of red. Seth from New York had a can of purple. Coke 2 had a can of like a light pastel aqua called Middle Calypso, like a spearmint green. Sweat had a green, sweat green from overseas. So it was a lot of writers. I think Dare had like a reddish orange. Dare from I can't remember where Dare from, but he passed away. But he had a color. So that was one of the things that I value about the spray can company at that point, paying homage to some of the writers. Now, I think some other writers should have got them some light too, but it ain't like that. Oh, Scene had one called Night Scene Blue. That was like a dark bluish purple color.
Was this Montana or Belton?
That was Belton.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Then further down the line, there was other companies that started to push the paint in the United States, and then what they started doing was they would have the whole can decorated with artist artwork on it. So they wanted to give certain artists spotlight by decorating their labels with their artwork and the name of the logo on the can. So I thought that was cool.
I remember those.
Yeah, those was cool. They was collectibles and stuff.
Yeah, those are pretty dope. I wanted to get into another topic also, if you could share. In the graffiti world, there's two terms that are frequently used, and I wanted to get your take on those two terms. One being capping, and the other one being toy.
What was the first word?
Were you able to hear me? Can you hear me now?
I heard the word toy, but what was the first one?
I was mentioning let me start over. Let me rephrase that. I was mentioning that in the graffiti world, there's two terms that are frequently used a lot, and I wanted to ask if I could get your take on that, on how you feel about those terms. One of it being capping, and the other one being toy.
Capping. Okay. Terminology is very important in this culture. They are the basic fundamentals of words that a lot of us use originally. And there's new words that people make up as time progresses and go along. But let's just say capping, because a lot of people say going over. I think the word capping came from looking at a writer in New York on the East Coast by the name of Cap. Cap would do his throw-ups over people burners and masterpieces. You know, I would say I think that word capping came from that. You know what I'm saying? You know, because Cap, if you see the documentary Star Wars, you know, Star Wars had Cap when people was like, who is this dude Cap going over everything? You know, and people I think started using that terminology, capping. Um, Toy. That's a word that's been around for a long time. A beginner, you know what I'm saying? Somebody who don't have the knowledge and the skills or the ability at that time to be like the masters of the art form. And so I think by people using that terminology, let's start back with capping. There's rules to this art form. When we are out there doing what we do, people say you don't go over. Okay, here's the rules. You could go over a tag with a throw up. You could go over throw up with a burner. And if you're gonna go over a burner, you got to be able to burn what's already up on the wall. So those are the rules and regulations to the art form itself. Those are the terminologies. So there's rules and regulations. Uh, a lot of people don't understand it, so they just do a little. They do their activities a little bit more reckless these days, I would say. I mean, it wasn't like nobody was doing stupid stuff back in the day, but if we saw some real good burners back then, man, or masterpieces, I didn't touch them. You know what I'm saying? I knew to respect it because I wanted to continue to look at it and study it. You know,
A lot,
so
a lot of people tend to not understand what a burner really is. For everybody that's tuning in, can you give them like a brief description of what you feel a burner is?
a burner, a burner is a highly intricate, intense, colorful, mechanical, wild style piece. That's a burner. A burner has every elements in it. You know, a simple style we wouldn't consider to be a burner. You know, it could be fresh, but it's not a burner. But the terminology, I'm glad you asked me that question because it's very important to know and understand these words because a lot of people use them and don't really understand what they're talking about. So,
Definitely.
yeah, so to do burners, you know, man, like I've always understood about a burner. A burner is when you finna really do some real serious, heavy duty, colorful work. It has a lot of style. It has every component and element that you need. So if you finna go to a battle and you gonna battle with style, you definitely wouldn't come with nothing simplified. In the battle, you gonna come with your best. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just mandatory to do so. You know, and I definitely encourage people to have healthy battles. I ain't talking about silly, stupid battles where they start beefing and start shooting and start fighting and acting dumb. I'm talking about battles to help you to improve your skill level, to help you to elevate in your thinking, to develop as an artist. You know, I think those type of battles are healthy. You know, man, you know, to me, those battles are lovely. I think the craft or the culture is missing that these days. A lot of people they don't
I
challenge the
personally
battle.
feel like it needs to come back, you know, because it needs to come back to where like if you want to battle, battle the right way, you know, take it to the wall, express your feeling through your art form, rather than being out here trying to pull a trigger or taking it to another level it's not supposed to go to.
I'm in agreement with you, but see the ones who do that, they bad sports. They don't know how to go back to the laboratory and redevelop and to sit down and just focus on the art form. They tend to go astray and they have another spirit and mentality that takes them into another level of feeling like, you know, oh man, you know, it's like a kid playing checkers or playing some kind of board game and they lose and they take the board and throw it and flip everything over. Same thing with the writing. You know, they lose in the battle, they want to start acting wild. That's not necessary. You know, unless somebody really getting disrespectful, then you do what you got to do. I mean, hey, everybody got to handle their business, but Focus on the art. Keep it on the art. That's the key.
Definitely. And now that we mentioned it, it came up. If I could get your take on how do you feel about crew beef? How do you think it should be taken care of when a crew is really beefing? Do you feel like they should just take it to the wall, or
That's
what would be your take on that?
okay. I got two ways. If it's a crew beef, like the way we just said it, have a battle, doing two walls or one big wall, splitting it in the middle, and see who got the freshest work. That's number one. Number two, we as people have to learn how to solve our issues very deeply with the mind. A lot of people might say, "Man, that shit's down corny and weak." No, it takes a real strong-minded person to be able to handle things from here and from here, from the mind to the mouth. If you can handle it like that, that's powerful. It ain't always powerful that we got to do it from here or from here. You know what I'm saying? Now watch this. If there's a crew situation where they need to deal with it verbally, we this is how I look at it. If I'm a leader or I'm a general, I'm gonna speak to the next general from another crew. And I'm not gonna approach you like, hey man, it depends on what's going on. I'm not gonna lie. It depends on what's happening. But you would definitely, with some kind of maturity involved, you might want to, we would want to approach it properly. I know there has been issue when I was younger with crews I was in, where we had some situation where people was trying to come to paint over our artwork or go to our yards and take over. But we, as young men, as young adults back then, not now, but back then, we had to handle it. And now, how did I handle it? Hey, what's up, man? Like, who's in charge? Like, who's the leader of your crew? And some of them be like, I'm the one. I'm like, okay, cool. What's your name, man? I'm so and so. But they very aggressive with it. I'm like, hey, man, okay, that's cool. There's no need for all that. Let's handle this properly. And I'm gonna tell them what the issue is. They gonna tell me what they feel, and we gonna try to deal with it like generals and leaders supposed to. Like I said, I didn't have some situations, man, where people came to our yard and tried to take over, and we had to confront that and deal with it. And we dealt with it right, and we ended up becoming cool. I'm not gonna name the name of a crew. It was some young dudes. They came to our yard and they didn't ask us permission to paint over our artwork. We just did it. So I just so happened to go by and see them doing it. I went to go tell my other buddy because they was around the corner painting on the other side of the wall. So we come back around and we confront them, but we did it real smooth. We didn't do it like no weak suckers, and then we did it like some bosses. We stepped up to the scene and we introduced ourselves. They looked at us like they was ready to fight. We still kept it like true bosses. We talked to them dudes, told them what was up. They was looking at us because they wasn't used to that. They was ready to do like that and start fighting. But the way we was coming at them from here, they was like looking like, what the hell? Like, these dudes is different. By the time we was done speaking to them, we ended up painting with them on one big thing, helping them to do their piece to make it appropriate. And then we told them the rules. Next time you want to do something, here's my number, man, or this is what you do to these are the rules you got to go by. Now they could have been like, fuck you, man, I don't care. Said that. But because of the way we communicated properly, they respected the get down and we kept it smooth. And ever since then, man, everything was good. So my advice to a lot of people out there, learn how to conduct yourself and handle maturely and handle your affairs properly. Because if you don't handle your affairs right, they can become very dangerous and deadly, or they can become long-lasting beefs that you don't need for no reason. We won't. Hey, it's too much drama in this world with some old foolishness that's happening in the world. The only thing we need right now is peace. That's all we need. Everything else, man, we don't need nothing else right now.
Yeah, man, definitely. And I wish there was more people that thought that way. When it came to some altercations or where you got to confront someone going over your stuff, where you could be more of a man and speak before you get aggressive. But unfortunately, a lot of people nowadays are having a hard time accepting that.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
there something that you could say now to anybody that's probably thinking about starting graffiti or is part of the new generation? Is there any words you could give them?
I have a whole lot of, I got a whole lot of words. Okay, so here we go. Number one, my advice is I want to encourage anybody watching this right now to go get the book Subway Art. I want you guys to go take a look at that book. A lot of people consider that book the Bible of this culture. It's not the only book, but it's one of the books that when we were coming up as a young person, man, I would go to the library. A lot of people used to rack the book and be stealing the book. I didn't do that. I ain't gonna be fronting. I used to go to the library and get the book over and over. Every time it was time to turn it in, I'd check it back out. And I would study that book. I would look at the pieces, look at the color scheme, look at the letter styles. And I would study these styles. My point is, for the new people getting involved, learn your history. Learn about who are the forefathers that invented and created styles. Now, that being said, that don't mean you got to keep doing what was already done. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is learn and understand style so that you could grow and you could take what's been done and then you could build from there. Or with the proper understanding and knowledge, what you can do is get a sense of learning how to structure the alphabet from A through Z, learning how to bend them, twist them, overlap them, underlock, and how to interlock them. That's very important. Most people don't even have these kind of conversations about writing because that's something totally different. These are the conversations that are needed within this culture of writing because most people don't understand what it is that they're doing. So I definitely highly encourage young people or anybody to go get the book Subway Art, watch the video Style Wars, because you have to understand of what it was when people was painting on the trains back in the day, you know. But let me make sure I make this clear. Just because you see that book and you see that documentary, those are two good books and documentary. But I want you to know there's history even before that. There was people painting in the 70s in New York. My homies from the TMT crew, they was doing masterpieces way back in the mid 70s. That they was trendsetters. The Death Squad with Part in them, they was trendsetters. The IND's crew from New York, they were trendsetters. Riff 170. Riff 170. He's the master of the mechanical style, the inventor of the mechanical style. Then you got Case 2, the computer rock style. You got people like Phase 2 who took the arrows and started to utilize the arrow in the pieces. Learning and understanding about the elements that we use in our pieces is very important. A lot of people might say if you're just getting started, I don't care about who did what. I don't care about none of that. I'm going to be me. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to be you, but do understand that there's a format. Let me give you this fast example. Watch this. You can't go on the basketball court and start playing football on the basketball court. There's rules to everything. So when you playing basketball on the basketball court, you can't double dribble. You can't be fouling nobody. There's rules to everything. Same thing with this graph culture or writing culture. There's rules to everything. But there was always room for a person like I'm old school. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he invented the sky hook. Boom. Magic Johnson, he had a way of finessing the ball and passing it. I'm old school like that. I ain't gonna lie. I don't want to talk about sports, but I don't know nothing about the rest of the new dudes. But all I know was in the 80s, them dudes was really doing some heavy stuff in sports. And I want to make that as an example to graph. There was people doing stuff that was in the 70s in New York, like Dondi White. There's a book. Go check this book out, folks. Dondi White, the Style Master General. That's a book. Go check that book out. Sometimes it's hard to find it. You might need to look online. see what Donnie was doing them sketches back in the 70s, the early 80s. Some of his stuff would beat a lot of stuff today that some people be trying to do. So I'm encouraging that. Yeah.
Do you feel that the culture deserves a spotlight in Hollywood now, like maybe like a movie, like a big movie?
Um, yeah,
Like
but
like
let me
like just
say, I
about
can tell you
rap?
why I say yeah. I say yeah because we do need the proper spotlight. Some people might say, man, fuck Hollywood. We don't need none of that what Hollywood got. Yeah, maybe. I might agree. It depends because this artwork is from the streets and it do belong in the streets, but we have elevated throughout a period of time to where now our artwork is seen in big museums, big galleries. Some people still might feel like that's not keeping it real. But guess what? You can't always just keep your work in one spot because the rules is a little bit different. I'm gonna give you an example. My work is in major museums like the Getty Museum. I have artwork in their private collection along with 149 other graffiti artists. I got work at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. I've done stuff for the Mocha Museum. I have stuff at the El Segundo Museum of Art. So I'm very active because here's the reason why. Not only did my stuff exist in the streets, my stuff is in people homes. My stuff is in people corporate offices. My stuff is in I like to collect things. That's my other level of getting up and staying up. That's the key. How what's your longevity involved in this? Because yeah, you could be up and be a overnight success and got up, and then you could be forgotten. See, I could have been retired from doing this, but this is a passion. I love what I do, so I haven't retired from doing it because even though I'm from the old school, my name still ring a bell for folks because I'm still active speaking. If I'm not speaking, I'm painting on the wall, or I may be doing both. Um, so yeah, that's what I suggest.
Can you share a little bit about the feeling of how it feels to, knowing that you started in the streets painting graffiti, and now knowing that your art is worldwide and noticed by some of the most, not the most, but maybe you could say influenced people, seen by a lot of people, and opportunities to work with kind of the companies that you worked with.
Oh, okay. You started breaking up like a robot. It was a little
Can you hear?
hard.
Can you hear me?
Okay, let's
Can you hear
see
me
if I
now?
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead. You still sound like a robot.
Damn, the Wi-Fi is all messed up today.
Nah, still bad. Still bad.
Give me a second.
Yeah, still bad.
All right, I'm trying to figure it out over here.
Yeah, still bad.
You can't hear me yet? No? Let's see. How about now? Can you hear me?
Still bad. A little bit. Just a little.
Can you hear me now?
Still bad. Not good. You can hear me good though?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Uh,
I can hear you.
let's say okay,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Now I can hear you better.
Okay.
Okay.
What I was asking is if you could share a little bit about the feeling of knowing that your art has hit, worldwide, and being able to work with big companies. If you could share a little bit about that feeling.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I can hear you real good now. That was a real good question. What do it feel like to have my stuff being seen by big companies or being utilized by big companies? That's a good feeling because that was part of my growth. I've always wanted to feel or see what's the next level of getting up. That's what we were just talking about, getting up. Like, how can I still exist in this culture or this movement, for people to see me getting up? It's definitely something that's interesting. Um, I've done work for Nike, where in 1994, for, let me see, I think 5 months, every month, we did a new billboard advertisement with artwork. Me and two other gentlemen as a team, we did artwork for Nike, and we did a collaboration where we had to do artwork together as one, and that was cool. That was like cool, man, because my art, well, our artwork was on billboards all over LA in the city. So that felt good for me. I was young back then. I was in my 20s. So when I was young and looking around at seeing my artwork on billboard, that gave me a good feeling because I saw that, wow, this is powerful. Other people could see my work. Um, Another thing for the MTA bus line, they had a contest to do artwork for the MTA, and me and my partner named Dimmer from the crew RTN, we did a collaboration that says Los Angeles, California, and our artwork was seen all on the inside of the buses, all on the buses on the inside. When the people were sitting down, they look up. Our artwork was on the inside. They had it on uh, for advertisement. And that was definitely, what I'm saying, something that was real cool. Man, I enjoyed getting on buses and I would see my work and it was a good feeling. Oh, here's another good one. When I did the commercial for McDonald's and my artwork was,
Whoa,
I did stuff for
that was a good
McDonald's,
one.
me and my friend. Yeah, and it was cool. Every time the commercial came on, man, people would call me, "Hey, man, I see your artwork in the McDonald's. I see you in the commercial." Because I was an actor and I did some artwork in the commercial. Me and my buddies Reefer One and Rodder One, 169, Rodder 169, and man, it made me feel good. Now, I don't let that get to my head. A lot of people do stuff and they get big headed. I stayed humble, man. I didn't let none of that get to my head. I was the kind of person like, okay, yeah, I did that, but I got to do some more, and I got to always make sure I give back to the community. I got to make for sure I help pull up other artists. I mean, some people, they don't know what it takes to get to the major league. It ain't just doing graffiti art for a person and saying here. You definitely got to sit with people which are called creative directors. You got to sit with art directors. You got to sit with people in big meetings, and you can't be like coming in there and sagging and white t-shirts. I had to put on a dress shirt with some nice pants. I can't be wearing my hat really. I got to walk in there. I'm gonna always be me. I don't go in there perpetrating and talking different, but I do talk properly in the sense of where I'm talking business to where they gonna respect me. I want y'all to hear that again, folks. When you doing business with people and you represent this art form, you can't go in there slouching in the seat. You can't be talking a bunch of slang. They gonna look at you like get this fool $1. Go buy him a lunch special. They not gonna respect you and give you what you deserve because it's the way you coming to the table. And so when I come to the table, I have to come correct. Why do I gotta come correct? Because I know my value. I know what I'm worth. I want the other people to respect me and respect what we do as writers, as artists, graph writers. I want them to know and understand that what we do, they hired us because that they can't do it. So we
Definitely.
special. We got a gift. We got a talent. So when we step on the scene, don't treat us like, oh, we got the little taggers here. Here you go. Give us a pat on the back. I ain't worried about them buying me no spray paint can. I mean, I'm gonna charge them for buying the paint because I charge for labor and I charge for materials. Two things. But I don't want them to think because they buy me some paint that, oh, okay, I'm happy. Because we grown men, we got families, right? So we got to pay bills, man. So spray paint, just me having a bunch of spray paint around ain't going to do too much for me. I got to be able to survive. So I have to know my worth. I got to know the value of who I am. When I charge for what I do, it's based upon my years of experience. It's based upon my skill levels. It's based upon my knowledge and my wisdom of what I know how to do, my expertise. Yeah.
Definitely, man. There's no better way to put that out there, and I hope everybody that's tuning in, listens to that and takes that into consideration if you're gonna take this art form to the next level.
Yeah.
There,
That's true.
there's a question